Hello and welcome to this quick review of the Dehancer toolset. Dehancer is mainly a tool and a plugin for tools like After Effects and Premiere Pro to make it like a film-like look, adding grain, halation and bloom effects. But it also has a Lightroom as well as a Photoshop plugin, and on top of that there is also an iPhone app that allows you to edit images and videos on the go. The kind folks at Dehancer approached me a while back asking me if I would like to check out and review their tools, and to be completely honest, I have not heard of them before, but I was very intrigued by the name Dehancer because it kind of echoes my philosophy where I often speak about how you have to actually degrade some of your CG renders, for example, because they're mostly too pristine and too good. So in a way you have to damage the image a little bit to make it actually better. Just adding imperfections, like chromatic aberrations and halation and bloom and of course film grain, just to give it like this analog organic look back. And this is exactly what Dehancer does. So we'll check it out and I'll let you know what I think of it. So before we start, let's go to the Dehancer website and you will see that it's available for multiple tools. In my case, I will of course use it for After Effects and Premiere Pro. So you can see that there's the After Effects Premiere Pro plugin, and Dehancer Pro is actually not just one tool, but it includes multiple tools. So you can see that you have tools like Film Developer, Film Compression, Grain, Film Damage, which is new by the way for the 2.0 version, as well as Tool Profiles, as well as a monitor, which is also new for 2.0. But also it has tools like bloom, halation, gate weave, film breath, and so on. So it's quite interesting. And what is also pretty cool that it's always with 2 seats included. So you can use it on your desktop as well as on your laptop machine, which is pretty cool because I'm alternating between 2 machines constantly. And also you will have the option of choosing Dehancer Lite, which has a little bit of a limited toolset, but should be still very, very cool for most of use case scenarios. So with that being said, you can also see that there is the photo app as well as the iPhone app that you can download on the App Store. And of course, there's tons of media you can check out, some fantastic resources in terms of reviews as well as tutorials, demo movies, and so on. And of course, the help page as well as the team where you can check out how many people are actually creating this fantastic tool. All right, so let's hop into After Effects and see what Dehancer Pro can do. So for this example, I shot a quick scene in our studio where Food and Text are shooting fantastic food photography images and videos. And I quickly hopped over and shot this delicious meal, which tasted really nice, by the way. And as you can see here, it's been filmed in log, so it is looking quite flat, and I used my Blackmagic 6K Pro camera to film that. And now let's apply Dehancer Pro to that. You can find Dehancer Pro if you go to your effects and you go to film emulation, then you'll see you have the choice of the 1.3 version as well as the 2.0 version. I'm using the 2.0 version. It just came out very recently. So as soon as I apply that, you will see this. Not quite what we want to see. Not too appealing at first, but wait, you have to apply it correctly. So in my case, my source is very important because it's not a Rec 709 source, but instead I have to choose my camera. So for this case, I'm choosing choose camera and I'm selecting my correct source. And in this case, I was shooting with the 6K and I choose generation 5 ISO 400. And now you can see that it instantly applies the LUT as well as some Dehancer magic, which is adding some film emulation and some organic look to that. And it looks just beautiful. Let me just play that back, and I hope YouTube compression is not killing that. As you can see, it's really going to work, and you can see how the grain actually looks like and how it emulates really nicely the film look. So you can of course apply a couple of things to that. You can compensate the temperature. You can work with the tint, and this should not be a tutorial by all means. There is plenty of great videos out there on YouTube that you can check out, but this will give you a good impression, I hope, about how you can or I can use Dehancer Pro. So let's open up a couple of settings and see what else we can do. So for example, you can compensate for a little bit of the exposure. So I can make it just a little bit brighter, just to make sure that it looks just good. And one new thing that is with the 2.0 version is the monitor. The monitor allows you to show some clipping indications as well as for the highs as well as the lows. So everything that is blue is clipping a little bit, so it's almost too dark. So maybe we can up it to maybe 0.3 just to get rid of that just a little bit. I think that's fine. So we can leave it at this. You also have some false color information that you can use to really make sure that your image is working correctly from a technical side of things. All right, so let's go back and look at all the other options that we have here in Dehancer. First of all, you have film. So you can choose your film profile. In this case, it's the Kodak Vision 3 250D, but you can choose quite a lot of film profiles from this extensive list. And of course, you can use the push-pull effect to either reduce or compensate for the look of it. And of course, if you do not want to have the film look at all, you can just toggle this off. And then now you have just a pure lookup table working its magic with the combination of the grain effect. So this will really touch also the appearance and the colors of how this will look, because it will emulate that actual film print. So depending on your needs, you can enable or disable that. But also you have a couple of things like the film developer, which will enable you to even push this further with adding contrast, gamma correction, color separation, as well as color boost to that. I leave that mostly off in my research. There's also film compression, which will make sure that all the highlights are compressed. So you can see if I enable that, it will kill some of the highlights to make sure that it's emulating the film compression that you would have. Of course, there's no right or wrong. You can just leave that out. And of course, you have expand, which will change the black and white point levels here. The next point is quite interesting because it will emulate the print onto the film. And again, you can see how it looks like by enabling it on and off. And of course, you can also choose different profiles on which film it should emulate the print. So these are pretty much the standard films that you would print on these days. So you can choose those. And of course, again, you always have the option with the enable button to turn it on or off right here. So color head. Color head can be used to color grade the image. I'm honestly not using that too much because I'd like to use Lumetri to color grade my footage, no matter if it's After Effects or Premiere Pro. But for the sake of it, I can show you that you can tint the yellow, magenta, and cyan, as well as the shadows, midtones, and highlights. So if you push it to the right, it will become warmer. If you push it to the left, it will become much cooler. But again, I prefer to work with visual color wheels instead of these values here. So usually I leave that off. Now, the next setting is really interesting to me because first I was mostly intrigued because of the actual film grain and how it emulates film grain, because that's actually the magic of it. So you can choose between a multitude of different film options from 8mm to 16 over to 35 and even 65mm, and also emulating which ISO setting you have from 50, 250 to 500. So depending on the setting, this will of course change the behavior of the grain. And now here's the interesting thing. Well, this is actually not just overlaying some grain pattern, but it's actually rebuilding the image by using grain algorithms. So you will see that you also have grain in the highlights, but also in the dark areas. And it really looks like grain and actually not like noise. So that's really intriguing and fascinating, and you can really work with that. One interesting side note is to choose the film type. Switching from positive to negative will change it quite a bit with some footage. But of course, you can fine-tune that to a really ridiculous amount. You can choose the size, the amount, the resolution, shadows, how much affects the midtones and the highlights. It's really going deep. but mostly choosing a preset should work just fine. And to have some drastic differences, you can also go to 8mm to 65mm if you want to have somewhat finer noise. So let's compare that 65 ISO 50 with the 35mm ISO 50. So now toggling the difference, you can see that the 35mm ISO 50 is much bigger, and the 65mm ISO 50 is much finer. So these settings will help you to really define how you want to have the grain appear in your image. So for the next couple of settings, I would like to jump to another example while I'm playing this back. Hopefully you can make out how the grain looks like, because I think it just adds a really beautiful organic look to the image here in this case. All right, so let's jump into something where I will be using Dehancer Pro quite a lot, which is adding grain and the film look to CG rendered material. So for this, let me go ahead and go to my little scene here that I have created for my fan film work. So you can see that spaceship flying through the hyperspeed tunnel here. And this is just in full HD, but I think it will still work fine. As you can see, it's a very pristine and clean image. There's no grain, no noise whatsoever. I rendered this out of Cinema 4D with Redshift, with a high sampling rate. The spaceship was textured in Substance 3D Painter, and the whole background was created also in Cinema 4D with some fantastic help of my dear friend Can Erdoman. So he helped me to create this Lightspeed look. Now, I mean, this looks okay as it is. However, I would like to add this effect, this film effect to it, just to make it ever so organic. So let's go ahead and add Dehancer Pro to this ship, into this sequence here. So adding that to it instantly shows you a huge difference in how it looks. So let me just turn this off so we can quickly toggle it on or off. As you can see, it looks just really, really beautiful. And now I mentioned a couple of settings, and I can just leave it as it is because already it looks really, really cool. I mentioned a couple of settings like halation and bloom, and these settings are really a bit of on the nerdy side of things. And I'm not a colorist, and I'm not a film stock expert, but I did some research and I found out that halation and bloom are also quite critical to the appearance of film. So halation and bloom both are imperfections actually, just as grain is, but it will add to that organic look and to the appearance that we really like in watching film. So halation gives you those red highlights, and I can emphasize that by going to maybe to 16mm, and you will see that whenever there's a highlight, there's like a slight fringe around those highlights. And I will show you another example where you can actually make this out a little bit more clearly. But the next thing I would like to add is bloom, and the bloom effect also gives you a little bit of glows, and just pushing the highlights, adding it a little bit of a glow. Sometimes it's more recommendable to actually use lower values that don't appear too strong, but rather give you the impression of feeling rather than seeing the effect. And of course, you can have things like film damage, which is also a new feature. So if you enable that, you will have a couple of scratches and hairs and dust that will be visible from time to time on the film, or actually on your footage here. I'm not a huge fan of that. That's just a little bit over the top for my taste. But you can play with things like vignetting, just making it a little bit darker around the edges, but also things like film breadth and gate weave are two settings that are really interesting. So what are they? Film breadth gives you a variation of the settings that's alternating from frame to frame, and you can specify the period and also the differences, and this will give it a little bit of a flickering look, so be careful with that. And gate weave is also quite interesting because gate weave will simulate the slight wiggle of what film would actually make, you know, when it's played back or actually scanned. So it will give you a little bit of wiggle in the pixels, and this will be very evident in the next example that I will show you. So let me just play that back as it is right now, and you can see how beautiful that looks. Now, you might be saying, well, all that is great and fine, but how about just applying some stock material like scanned 35mm grain footage on top of your renders? Well, yes, you can definitely do that, and I admit I did that quite a lot of times. So going to my comparison scene that I have prepared here, you can see that I'm using some grain footage that I got off R-Grain, and it looks great. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it, and it's a 35mm 250 footage element that I'm overlaying here. So I'm using the overlay mode to overlay that to add some grain effect. The big difference will be that in the highlights, it's almost not visible given the mathematical process of how you overlay grain. Now, let me just activate the Dehancer grain element over that, so you will see that it completely affects all the regions, not just the mids and the lows, but also the highlights. So the actual look is drastically different. And let me just pull this under it so you can see a side-by-side comparison. And again, this is maybe a little bit too much, so let's go ahead and go in and choose a film grain that is a little bit finer. So let's go for grain and choose 65mm ISO, maybe 250. So you can see that it affects the highlight much differently. And of course, you can specify all that, but opposed to an overlay of grain footage, again, Dehancer is rebuilding the image by emulating how grain would basically behave with real film. So of course, it's up to you what you choose, but I believe that Dehancer Pro does a much better job of rebuilding and emulating that organic film look. So, and now let's go ahead and see what else we can do with Dehancer Pro. So in my case, I also do a lot of title design, motion graphics, where I am adding, you know, type onto a layer. And this footage, believe it or not, I just shot it outside of our place here. It was a beautiful morning. You can see a couple of drops and, you know, the sunrise and everything. And in fact, I shot this with my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it's just incredible what these devices can output. So I shot this using the Blackmagic camera app. And now let me just go ahead and add an adjustment layer to that. So adding an adjustment layer, and now adding Dehancer. And again, I have to specify, just as with my other source, I have to specify what source I have in this case. And by the way, for my CG render, I left it at Rec 709, that's fine. And now I can go ahead and say choose camera. And of course, you'll now also have the option in Dehancer already to choose the Apple iPhone Apple log if you're shooting it with the standard camera app. If you're using Filmic Pro, you can use that as well. But of course, you can also use the Pocket Cinema Camera from Blackmagic, which matches my setting here for the iPhone. So already you can see the results are quite beautiful. So you get something that looks like this. Out of the box with just a few clicks, you create that beautiful film emulation to your footage. But I mentioned that I want to use this more with Topography. So I quickly created this, you know, this fake title sequence. What Lies Beyond is the fake title of the fake movie that never existed. But as you can see here, the type is really crisp, and I don't like that look. Now, this would really stand out because it's not merging so nicely with the footage. What instead I would recommend is using an adjustment layer that is above both of that. So I prepared a couple of settings here already. I also did a little bit of lumetri color, just coloring it a little bit, giving it a little bit of a grade. So let me just show that first. So this is the color grade that I'm applying here, pushing the greens more towards the blue in the dark areas and the mids to the green areas, and also the sunrise, make it look like the highlight really warm. So that's why I'm pushing this to the red area. But now adding Dehancer Pro to that will give you an entirely new look, and watch how beautifully the highlights for the type and also the edges blend with the background. Now I mentioned the gate weave effect, and I want to enable the gate weave here, and I would like to show you actually what it does when we are enabling the guides. So let's go ahead and enable the guides, and let me just render that sequence really quickly. And let me zoom in. So you can see that slight wiggle, and I think it's just beautiful the way it works. So let me just play that back, and you won't notice it really. Again, this is something that you rather feel than see, but if we look closely and if we scrub through, you will see that the actual pixels are really wiggling. So you can see the especially the E and the S are really jumping around a little bit. And of course, as with everything, you can set it up to an insane amount of detail. So you can specify how much it should wiggle, also the impact, and you can also enable the auto zoom, so it will zoom in the image a little bit so you don't have any gaps on the sides of the image when applying the gate weave effect. I think it just adds so much to that, and looks really, really cool. Okay, cool. So what else can we do? We saw how you can treat CG renderings, iPhone elements, iPhone footage, Blackmagic camera footage, but also pure title sequences like this one. So let's go ahead and check this one out. So this is, again, a fake title sequence for a movie that never existed. But all of this was created in Adobe After Effects beta. So all this 3D part was created in Substance 3D Painter. So all the textures put in as a GLB file into After Effects, and then animated a light, given a little bit of a zoom in effect. So that looks pretty cool. And as you can see here, you have a lot of effects going, and here you can actually quite nicely make out the halation effect. So jumping back to this one, you will see the halation quite clear. So just disable that. And I mentioned this before, and if we enable halation, you will see those on those highlights, those reddish, purplish fringes that will give this beautiful look that combined with the bloom effect, this will look just so much more organic. Playing that back with some grain, this already looks much more filmic than without any effect to that. So this is without, and this is with. So again, beautiful effect. And last but not least, let me show you another one. I've just imported 4K versions of that that I have slightly enhanced. So again, bigger resolution, added a little bit of smoke element from Action VFX. So this looks a little bit nicer, and we have a bit more pixels to play with. So again, I'm gonna add Dehancer Pro to that, giving it an instant film look. Maybe it's a little bit too bluish, too cool. So I can always go in and play with the color head if I don't want to use Lumetri. So I can enable that, and I can make the highlights just a little bit warmer, just adding a little bit of that warmth back. So it's not too cool. So that looks beautiful as it is. And again, going in, adding a little bit of gate weave and a little bit of bloom, and of course halation for those highlights. And already this looks really nice. And also, if I'm sure most of you know it already, grain or noise for that matter will actually help you to counter the effects of banding. So you get smoother gradients and you don't have the banding effect. But again, combine this with the smoke and it looks much nicer as a fake title sequence. And last but not least, I will show you how you can apply this to interior sequences that are entirely CG. So for this, I'm using a shot of my fan film that I created here. So this is all CG. And again, talking about how to perfect of a shot that is. You can see all the edges, everything is just too crisp and just too perfect. This would not look like that. And in fact, I did I did a little bit of research just to find out what they were using for the real movies. And in fact, I was Googling for Star Wars and Kodak and film, and I found this little article on the Kodak website that goes into very, very high detail of what stock they used and how they were actually filming the sequel trilogy. So you can actually see that they were, in fact, using Kodak Vision 3 500T and so on. Again, I'm not a stock expert, but this was very interesting to see that in fact you can emulate these looks quite nicely. So let's go ahead and apply Dehancer Pro to that as well. And again, you see it instantly change the look of that. So this is with and without. And if you don't like how the look in terms of color is affected, you can always disable the print, and now it's only adding the grain. And of course you can enable halation as well as bloom to that, just to give it that extra look. Again, maybe halation is a little bit too strong for my taste, for the default value, so you can always tone it down. But I think it's quite quite impressive of what it does to that image sequence just by adding a little bit of Dehancer magic to that. With that said, let's jump on over to Lightroom and see what Lightroom can do. All right, here we are in Lightroom. Lightroom is my go-to app, all things photos. I'm not a photographer, however, I love photography and I do a lot of photos. And from a trip in Iceland, of course, I have quite a few stunning sceneries that were just begging to be photographed, just as this scene here. I think it was Godafoss. And of course, you can edit the photos and everything in Lightroom, which is really nice, as always. But if you want to add the film look to that, you can do that with the Dehancer Pro plugin. So in order to adjust or work with the Dehancer Pro plugin, you have to control or right click onto the image, and you have to go to Edit in, and then you select Edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin app. So as soon as you open that, it will ask you if you want to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments or just the original or just a copy. In my case, I have it as it is, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. I'm saving the copy that it creates as a TIFF in sRGB with 16 bits, and I don't choose any compression. So I click on Edit, and this will then open, or actually export the image and open it up in the Dehancer Photo plugin. Now, before you get started with it, it's very important, it's also pointed out in the manual, that you click on that little cogwheel here and you update your film profiles just to make sure that it's downloading all the latest films and print assets and setups and presets before you can get going. All right, as soon as that's done, you can click on OK and on Close, and you can start editing your photos. And instantly, you will see that it has a slightly different interface compared to what we've seen here in After Effects or even Premiere Pro. Basically, on the left, you will start with selecting your profile, and you can choose from so many incredible presets, but also you can visually navigate around and look at what will actually jump at you in terms of look and feel. So this is the Adox color, which is slightly toned down. This is the Agfa color, which is a little bit more on the cooler side of things. So let's choose this one. I think this one looks beautiful. And of course, you can also change all those settings here on the right-hand side. And many of those settings you already saw in the After Effects or Premiere plugin, and it's very, very similar. And of course, you can also choose the film grain. You can specify how big the size of the grain should be, also which film type, if it's positive or the negative. And interestingly, halation as well as bloom are already on as a default. But again, as with all the presets here and settings, you can change them all to a very amazing detail. So let's go through some of the settings here that look quite nice. We can browse them, and I think there's also a couple of stunning black and white sets, like this one, for example, or I think the next one was also pretty cool. This one here is also quite nice. It gives you this little bit of a silver silverish look. So these are really, really cool. And of course, you can toggle between the presets as well as the films, and you can also create your own presets here, of course. A couple of more interesting details here. You can toggle preview on and off just to see the before and after. And of course, you can also see the one-to-one dimensions, which zooms in so you can actually make out the pixels versus the grain. So this is the 100% view. You can also activate the histogram here so you can see if there's any clipping in the shadows or in the highlights. And of course, if you're happy with the result, you can click on OK, and this will be then saved to your Lightroom. So this works really, really nice, and give it a try in Lightroom. And the same applies, by the way, for Photoshop. So you can use the same plugin in Photoshop if you want to edit your images in Photoshop opposed to Lightroom. All right, now let's take a look at Dehancer for iPhone and iOS. So first of all, it can be installed through the App Store, and you can browse through all the images that you have created. Or you can, of course, use the camera app that is built in to open and actually shoot a photo, but also video. So it is not just a camera app for stills, but also for videos. If you want to get started, I advise you to update the profiles first by clicking on that update button, and this will make sure that you are up to date with the latest profiles and presets. Now, if you are choosing a photo I took in the mountains just recently, again, you will feel very familiar if you are using Dehancer Pro for Photoshop, Lightroom, After Effects, or Premiere Pro, or all the other tools. So basically, it's using the same algorithm to create the beautiful film look that you can see here. And of course, you can browse through all the different settings that are pre-installed. So you can choose the Aqua color, the Fuji. Let's go ahead and see what else we have. I think this one looks pretty cool in black and white. So you can really see a really good preview, and you can move the app around quite easily. So you have a bit of a bigger preview area. And of course, you can also show the histogram just to see if anything is blown out. So you see a little bit of red highlights here, that some of the highlights are clipping just a little bit. I think that's totally fine. And that's basically it. You could already just use it as it is and choose any of those presets and export your photo to your camera roll or share it directly online. But of course, there's more, because you can also click on the edit button here. So let's choose the Kodak Aero color. I think that's a pretty beautiful image setting here. And let's go to edit. And of course, just as with all the other Dehancer tools in the other apps, you have a ton of settings that you can manipulate, change, adapt, and adjust to your liking. So of course, you have all the source setting, like exposure compensation and temperature compensation. You have all the film presets that you can choose. You also have developer presets in terms of how you want to have the contrast, the gamma changed. You also have some compression to compress some of the highlights. As you can see here in the middle area of the image, it's compressing down some of the blown out highlights. I think I'll leave that for this setting right here. And of course, you can click on expand for black and white point, and print to make sure that you are like simulating the print onto the Kodak Endura glossy paper. And yeah, you have a lot of choices on how you want to play with these settings. And of course, my favorites, which is halation and bloom, and of course, a little bit of vignetting if you want to just give it a little bit of a darker edge. So altogether, the iOS app for Dehancer Pro is really, really powerful, and it allows you to basically create the film look on the go for photos as well as for videos. A little bit of a side note, for videos, you also have the gate weave to simulate gate weave as well as film breath. So those options are hidden for stills, naturally, but are becoming available as soon as you are opening and working with videos. And there's also a very interesting another app which is called Color Test. This allows you to basically playfully test your color perception. So yeah, you can download that app for free. It's fun to use. Check it out. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful and helpful. Let me know what you think of Dehancer down below in the comment section. Please make sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you in the next video.